clear-eyed about the challenges that remain. During this quarter, sexual offenses, including rape and contact sexual crimes, along with commercial crimes, have shown increases. These are deeply concerning trends that demand renewed focus and urgent intervention, as indicated above. Let me be unequivocal. Every crime that is reported in South Africa is recorded and accounted for by South African Police Service. Every crime that is reported in South Africa is recorded and accounted for, whether it occurs in urban or rural areas. We are encouraged that all but one province recorded a decrease in murder incidents. That is Northern Cape, despite contributing only 2% to the national murder statistics, recorded an increase nevertheless, which can't be ignored and will be addressed with the targeted actions. The four high crime provinces, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape and Eastern Cape, contributed the bulk of murder incidents nationally, as before. Yet when compared to the same period last year, the current statistics offer some encouragement. Among the top 30 police stations for murder, 13 stations registered lower counts, and 2 stations recorded no change. We will continue to intensify efforts to reduce the overall murder rate in the country and other crimes. Regrettably, we must report the loss of 22 police officers, 6 while on duty and 16 while off duty, with 10 of those in Gauteng. This is not just a loss to the SAPS, but to the entire nation. Let us be clear, an attack on police officers is an attack on the state, and those responsible will face the might of the law, as will be reported in terms of inclusion in the arrests that have been made, in some cases sentences. Now, on farm attacks, we have on a number of occasions appeared before the Portfolio Committee to account for our strategy in protecting rural communities, both outside and inside commercial farms. Our National Rural Safety Strategy is designed to create a safe and secure environment in rural areas. We are committed to fully realizing and implementing this strategy, as from this year, when we release the first quarter stats results, we will include a number of other categories of crime in the country to show a fuller picture. For an example, killings in communal rural areas, in urban areas, as well as on commercial farms, as we'll do today for the last time, at the exclusion of the other categories just mentioned. And therefore, for now, the stats that we have is for commercial farms. In the period under review, there were 2 farm owners who were murdered in South Africa. 1 farm dweller, 2 farm employees, and one farm manager. In principle, we do not categorize people by race. But in the context of claims of genocide of white people, we need to unpack the killings in this category. The 2 farm owners that were murdered during the 4th quarter were African and not white. Further to that, the 2 farm employees and 1 farm manager were also African. It is the 1 farm dweller that was white. I do also want to mention that the recent farm murder, which occurred in Roossenekal in Limpopo, occurred in the first quarter of the current financial year and will thus be reflected in the release of the next crime statistics. The history of murders in the country has always been distorted and reported in an unbalanced way. The truth is that farm murders have always included African people and in more numbers. But what has been reported are just from one section of the community, that is the white community murders on farms, when in fact murders themselves include Africans, as we have just reported now. We want to reject the notion of land grabbing in the country from the point of view of police, but instead confirm that we do have cases of land invasions, and the two are very different. Land grabs make reference to some organized way and an approach by government wherein or communities allowed by government people to grab lands from owners to those who are grabbing, and it gets allowed. Invasions are unlawful acts by people in a sporadic way as a result of desperation for land, in many cases. Wherever it takes place, it remains unlawful, and that's why cases get opened for that, and investigations ensue. Now, this land hunger, that leads to unlawful acts in a sporadic way by some people, small groups of people, has warranted expropriation without compensation to address the problem in a lawful and systematic way. Hence, the signing of that law by the President to allow the country in part to address land access disparities and sheer desperation for land in our country, more especially in peri-urban areas, as we know. And I need to emphasize that there are very little or no land grabs, even no invasions in rural areas. What you see here, and maybe fewer on farms, very few even on farms, rural farms. More invasions are in peri-urban areas in South Africa. It's a phenomenon that is there to be seen by all of us on a daily basis. So there are no land grabbings from rightful owners in the country. It's an unfounded allegation. It is an unsubstantiated allegation, and it remains so, even though it is said by people who are in high positions. My colleague in Land Reform and Rural Development has confirmed his concern against the misleading notion, and he will clarify that next week. Last quarter, we reported that a total of 12 farm murders had been reported, with one farm owner having been murdered. Notable progress has been made in respect of the investigations into these cases, and a number of arrests have been made. We do want to assure South Africans that the SAPS prioritizes all types of crimes and conducts thorough investigations to ensure that justice is ultimately served. A total of 178,757 suspects were arrested in this period under review. It has been reported that the prison population has been exceeded by high numbers. This is indicative of the police work that leads to arrests, sentencing, and ultimately in prison. People don't just walk to prisons. They get identified as suspects. The cases in which they're involved get investigated, and they are arrested, and they go to court, and they get convicted and sentenced. And that's why they're in prisons. And these are the prisons that we say are now overpopulated as a result of police work. And this is an illustration, undisputed and undisputable illustration, that crimes are followed up in the country. And it debunks the claim that nothing gets done when crimes get committed in our country. It's not true. On GBV, in respect of sexual offenses, rape increased. Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal contribute 19.1% and 19.9% respectively to the national total or tally. In the court under review, decreases in rape statistics were recorded in Eastern Cape, in Gauteng. So although Gauteng recorded 19.1%, but it is among provinces where statistics show some decrease. That includes Limpopo, Northwest, and Western Cape. Ordinarily, we would be happy with the decreases, but these crimes are very violent for us to be happy. Even if it happens to one person, we would still be unhappy, and want to emphasize that these are savage crimes, and the perpetrators don't deserve to be treated as human beings. But of course, our codes direct that we do so, treat them in accordance with the relevant codes. While we acknowledge that GBV affects all genders, women remain disproportionately affected by rape, assault, GBH, and murder. Our resolve to fight GBVNF is unwavering. To this end, the JCPS, that is the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster, has launched a 90-day GBVNF Blitz, which began on the 1st of May 2025. This includes the revival of the Interministerial Committee, GBVNF tasked with coordinating government interventions, resolving systemic bottlenecks, and ensuring measurable progress. Net Joins is leading coordination together with the two ministers designated to lead on the task at executive level, namely Social Development and Department of Women and Children and People with Disabilities. This is done to coordinate frontline safety and protection efforts. What we will be doing in the 90 days, led by NetJoins, is to ensure that every incident is followed effectively and efficiently by relevant law enforcement departments or units. In the case of GPVF, police, prosecutors, magistrates, so that we close all the loopholes that sometimes happen due to an uncoordinated way of dealing with this matter. We are delighted with the recent KZN arrest, even after the suspect ran away. He was still pursued and re-arrested, following allegations of rape of school children. And, of course, other cases that are showing much more focus on the matter. On illegal firearms, firearms remain the most frequently used instrument in the commission of murder, followed by knives. One of our stated priorities is the reduction of illegal firearms and the tightening control of legal firearms, that is legally owned firearms. Hence, the regulations that were released, to which people are still invited to make comments. And it will lead to a closure of the process of comments, and will then be sifting and analyzing their comments, which will then finalize the process at some point with the final regulations. We are realizing that there are loopholes even in the processes for legally owned firearms. We need to close those gaps in the interest of safety of the people in South Africa. But we are also equally emphasizing even more, putting more emphasis on illegal firearms that people use on a daily basis to commit murder out there. A total of 16,049 firearms were destroyed by SAPS in February this year. These were not firearms that were handed over to police. They were collected through police activity by police during Chanela operation and other operations by police and searches. 1,641 illegal firearms were collected, and 24,288 rounds of ammunition were seized during this period. Commercial crime increased by 1,581 counts in the fourth quarter, representing a 4.7% rise. Gauteng has 12,074 and Western Cape 7,244 recorded at the highest numbers, those two provinces. We commend DPCI for their continued effort in this regard. 656 suspects appeared in court during this quarter, 364 from serious organized crime, 220 from serious commercial crime, 72 from serious corruption. We urge the DPCI to remain steadfast in executing their constitutional mandate, and of course, SAPS relevant units in this regard. On stock theft. Stock theft is one of the priority crimes for the police, as it not only threatens the financial stability of our agricultural sector, but also undermines the livelihood of countless families who depend on livestock for their subsistence and economic well-being. An 8.9% decrease in stock theft has been recorded in this quarter, we are reporting on. Back in March, we convened a stakeholder engagement in the Free State on stock theft. This was well attended by various stakeholders from the Free State, from KwaZulu-Natal, and from Eastern Cape and Limpopo. The focus of the engagement was to engage those largely affected by stock theft and other crimes or related crimes, and the desired measures that all of us have to employ, SAPS and the affected farmers, what we need to do and what we need to strengthen. The engagement was successful, and we have full confidence in the various stock theft units throughout the country that they will continue to execute their work with efficiency. On Wednesday, as an example, last week, the Eastern Cape SAPS recovered stolen livestock in Qumbu, in Matatiele, in Maclear and Solo during their operations. They recovered livestock which included 231 cattle, or head of cattle, to the value of 2.7 million. 81 sheep worth over 160,000, 78 goats worth 150,000. We commend the various teams for this, and we urge them to remain vigilant and continue in their efforts to fight stock theft. Other farmers and farm associations elsewhere have also shown interest in working with SAPS in the Northwest, in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, and we will be attending to those challenges in those areas. What are the measures that we are taking to tighten up our efforts in fighting crime? We believe this is important in this release. First, we held a meeting in November last year. Ministry and top management, including provincial commissioners. This was followed by further conversations from the beginning of the year up to the National Policing Summit, which captured all the conversations, all the views that are needed, and the measures that we need to craft and put together and implement to fight crime in South Africa. We are steadfast in our commitment to building a policing system that is effective and efficient and responds in a professional way, and make sure that the service as a whole is identified by those values that are reflective of our democracy. We want South African police to be one of the most effective and efficient police organizations in the world. The national policing policy, which is apart from holding the summit, there's a national policing policy which has just been approved by Cabinet on the 15th of May, which gives effect to Section 206 of the Constitution, which mandates the Minister of Police to determine national policing policy with provincial governments in consideration of the province's policing needs and priorities. The national policing policy aims to, among other things, strengthen police service delivery to communities by ensuring professionalism and efficiencies in policing, and is supported by integrated crime and violence prevention strategy, which seeks to address crime and violence and its root causes. As a measure to intensify our efforts against crime, we are repositioning police to confront crime with more vigor and sharpness. To achieve this, we have reviewed the organogram of SAPS as a whole. the branch that is known as visible policing will now be divided into two. There will be visible policing as one division, and then there will be another division called Operational Response Services. So where there was one division, there are now going to be two divisions. This is done with a sole purpose of sharpening our combative side of SAPS in keeping with the trends of crime and threats that we see on a daily basis. We will be going down to community level policing where there is indiscriminate use of firearms on a daily basis, in some cases, where people get murdered without any cause on a continued basis. We will be confronting what is normally called hotspots, which have become characteristic of criminality in the country. That includes places that are generally taken for granted now, that they are killing fields in different provinces, especially in the Western Cape, in Gauteng, in KZN, and of course, in the Eastern Cape. We are happy that in this regard, all the processes with organized labor have been gone into, and we're happy that they cooperated with us when we needed that cooperation, and we're doing the final touches within the department to ensure that that leads to the fully operational new division in this regard. The fourth measure that we are taking, currently there are 5,500 trainees in our various SAPS academies. Pass-outs for both will be in August and November this year, which will close some of the gaps that get open when police leave the service, but also strengthen the numbers that we currently have. And number 5, we have identified a number of enablers as support measures to police and to policing as a whole, which we identify as critical. Now, one, we want to improve efficiency of our forensic services, which we regard as critical and impacting directly on the work of police. Currently, this is hamstrung by the number of laboratories that we have. And we're happy that in the few weeks to come, we'll be signing a memorandum of understanding with Department of Science and Technology, who have indicated their willingness for us to access their lab in the CSIR. Work is underway to do this, and there's no doubt that when we second our staff there, it will help us to minimize the backlog that we have on our work on labs. And secondly, last week we finalized an agreement with the Public Works Department in relation to a temporary and a permanent lab in KZN, which is work that has been outstanding for a long time. We're aware of the fact that forensic work needs to be done in a way that is spread up to Gauteng instead of work being done in that province and finalized there. And we are going to be seeing work and meeting every month with Public Works to ensure that there's progress with the speed that this matter requires. And so KwaZulu-Natal will first get a temporal forensic lab and then thereafter a permanent one. But it will start parallel. These processes will run parallel. This will be followed at the same time by a lab preparations for Mpumalanga, which has actually started, but will gain speed as we move on, to be followed by other provinces. Now, other enablers which have been identified and processes are underway is with regard to technology enhancement in assisting work done by police. We realize, as we have said before, we are not at the level that is required. And we did have some discussion with National Commissioner on ways that we can pick up speed on this matter, notwithstanding the problem that we and not allow ourselves to be hamstrung by the availability of resources in this financial year, but a way to overcome that particular problem. And we'll soon be finalizing this and gain speed in necessary technology in our policing, which the Policing Summit identified as critical. And we're focusing on improving the conditions of work in police stations, and are on our way to finalizing plans to speed up building police stations, which we are sure will improve the morale of police that are working in conditions that are below what is necessary, in line with the outcomes of the summit. Now, at this stage, I want to conclude by saying we would want the public to exercise caution when consuming and sharing information, especially on social media platforms. We are seeing increasingly recycled news stories which get often circulated to cause unnecessary panic among South Africans. In some cases, they circulate pictures of things which have never happened in South Africa, which are picked up elsewhere in the world. And then they are brought into social media in the country. And we're cautioning, therefore, against that. These outdated reports can give false impression that crime is spiraling out of control, when in fact, they do not reflect the current reality. We want to remind the public that they must remain vigilant and against fake news and misinformation, regardless of where it comes from. For accurate and timely updates on incidents, we would want to invite the public to rely on SAPS communication, which is good, which is accurate, which is almost all the time in real time. And of course, we do try other channels of keeping the public informed. We're not preventing the public from sourcing their own information whenever, but let us be factual in terms of what we are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, the path ahead is still long, but we're making progress, and together with an informed and engaged and responsible society, we'll win this fight against crime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I am going to call upon the SAPS Crime Registrar, Major General Tsularis Kukuni.
Let me begin by greeting the Honorable Minister of Police, Mr. Mchunu, and the National Commissioner of South African Police Service, General Masemola, the head of Civilian Secretariat, Ntate Sibui, the two Deputy National Commissioners, General Musikili and General Sibia, members of the media, all colleagues on the platform, allow me to say all protocol observed. In this current quarter, the stats that we'll be covering the period from the 1st of January 2025 up to the 30th of March. That will be quarter 4 in terms of the financial year. What I would like to clear out first is the fact that the presentation has been prepared. It has too many slides. We have cut down the slides to a manageable size. However, as soon as we finish with the presentation, it will be uploaded on the SAPS website. So those that are interested in getting the full version of the presentation can access it via the link or the QR code that will be displayed at the end of this session. As is the norm, we normally start with a summary table that gives you what is normally termed the 17 community reported crimes, but in essence there are more than 17 because in other of these subcategories we have lumped together certain crimes. So, but when we present them, we break them out so that you can understand the details of what makes up a particular crime category. For instance, like your sexual offenses is broken down into your rape, sexual assault, attempted sexual offenses, contact sexual offenses, etc. Your robbery with aggravating circumstances is also further broken down. So if you add this breaking down of the broader categories, you end up with something like 22 to 25 types of crime. But because of the groupings, that's why we say the 17 community reported crimes. The summary table, which gives the crime picture that has been reported and captured by the South African Police Service, leads with a reduction of murders in the current quarter, where we had a reduction of 809 counts of murders compared to the previous comparable period. The current numbers is 5,727, whereas the previous comparable period we had 6,536, resulting in the 809 reduction that we are observing here, a percentage reduction of 12.4. The second crime is the sexual offenses. When you look at it from the slide, it indicates that it has reduced by 6 counts. These 6 counts are the combination or the addition of the rape, sexual assault, attempted sexual offenses, contact sexual offenses, etc. And this increase that we are seeing here is informed by the increase that we have observed in terms of the rape figures that we have reported in the current quarter, which is an increase of 36 counts. The raw numbers for the rapes for the current quarter is 10,688, whereas the previous comparable period we had 10,652, which led to the increase of 36 counts more and a 0.3% increase. Attempted murders, we recorded a reduction of 428. Assault GBH, we recorded a reduction of 2,457. Common assault, we recorded a reduction of 1,721. Common robbery, a reduction of 949. Robbery with aggravating circumstances, a reduction of 3,677. The sum total of the reduction for these crimes that we talked about, which are contact crimes, is 10,035, a percentage reduction of 5.8. I've already touched on the increases that we have observed for sexual offenses that are made up of rape. I will then skip to the subcategories of robbery with aggravating circumstances, which is made up of what is called the trio crimes, because it has been indicated in the victims of crime that these are the crimes that are mostly feared by members of the community. These trio crimes are made up of carjacking, robbery at residential premises, and robbery at non-residential premises. The trio crimes, they have all reduced. The carjacking reduced by 805, robbery at residential premises reduced by 21 counts, robbery at non-residential premises reduced by 1,005 counts, and the sum total of the reduction of the trio crimes is 1,831. Then the robberies of cash in transit, we had 35 counts in the current quarter compared to the 40 in the previous comparable quarter, leading to a reduction of 5 counts. We did not have any bank robberies. We did not have any bank robberies, and we had 99 truck hijackings. On the next slide, we continue with what is called the contact-related crimes that are made up of 2 crimes, that is arson and malicious damage to property. Both the crimes that make up this subcategory have reduced, with arson reducing by 117 counts, malicious damage to property reducing by 918, and the sum total of this subcategory reducing by 1,035. Then the other subcategory that we look into is property-related crimes, that is made up of the 5 crimes, that is your burglary at non-residential, burglary at residential premises, theft of motor vehicle and motorcycle, theft out of or from motor vehicle, and stock theft. All the 5 crimes that make up this subcategory have all recorded reductions. Then the other subcategory is what is called other serious crimes, which is made up of all theft not mentioned elsewhere, commercial crime, and shoplifting. Of the 3 crimes that make up this subcategory, only commercial crime has recorded an increase, and that was an increase of 1,581 counts, leading to a percentage increase of 4.7. 7 of the 9 provinces have recorded increases, and the 2 provinces that recorded decreases was the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga. Then the last category is what is called the crime detected as a result of police action, whereas you might have observed that in the previous categories, the trajectory of change was the desirable trajectory of change is a reduction, and it is color-coded green. In this subcategory of crime detected as a result of police action, the desired trajectory of change is an increase, and it is color-coded green. That is the trajectory that we would like to see, because it means that more and more firearms are taken out of the wrong hands or out of circulation. People that are driving under the influence of liquor and alcohol and drugs are being taken off the streets. So if you look at those 4 crimes that make up the crime detected as a result of police action, they have all increased. As I indicated, this is the desired trajectory of change that we would want to see within this specific category. Then on the next slide, we look at the subcategories. We have already touched on this, so I will tend to move a bit faster. What is kind of different between what we have observed in the previous table is that here we exclusively show the percentage reduction or the percentage change of the provinces, and we also indicate the months that make up this current quarter. You can see from this slide, for the 17 community reported crimes in January, we recorded a reduction of 4,589. In February, we recorded a reduction of 12,415. In March, we recorded a reduction of 6,175. And all the 9 provinces have recorded a decrease. Then we now move on to the subcategory of contact crimes. For contact crimes, again, for the 3 months that make up the quarter, January, February, and March, we recorded decreases across all the months. And then for the provinces, the only province that has recorded an increase in this current quarter is the Northern Cape, which recorded an increase of 72 counts. And the Northern Cape, in terms of the contact crimes, contributes at 3.2%. All the other 8 provinces recorded decreases. Then on this slide, we look at the top 30 stations that make up the contact crimes. What is worth noting of the top 10 stations in the top 30 for contact crimes is that they are only made up of stations from 3 provinces. That is your Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Gauteng. Another observation is that if you look from station number 1 all the way up to station number 7, bar station that is at number 4, all are stations that are in the Western Cape. The only one that breaks that series for the top 7 station is Inanda at number 4, which is in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Then the last 2 stations are each, the numbers 8 and 9 are in the province of Gauteng, and then again Umlazi in KwaZulu-Natal, making up the top 10 in terms of the contact crimes. Then in terms of the murders, we have recorded decreases across all the 3 bars that make up the quota, and the only province among the 9 that has recorded an increase in terms of the murder is the province of the Northern Cape, which recorded 21 counts more compared to the previous comparable period. In terms of percentage contribution of the murders per province, the provinces which contribute the highest murder figures to the national total is the province of Gauteng, which contributes 25.1%. The second highest is KwaZulu-Natal with 20.8%, and the Western Cape is at 17% if you round it off, and also the Eastern Cape. So in terms of percentage contribution to the murder total, the 4 provinces that I've indicated are the ones that contribute almost around 70 to 80% of the murder figures that we are observing. Then this is a graphical representation when you take into consideration the population of the respective provinces, because the numbers per province might mislead in the sense that the lesser a province has, the lesser the province's population, you find that when you look only at the raw numbers, they give you a misleading figure, because the population of the province is small. Now, in order to make sure that you standardize and you can be in a position to compare apples to apples, you then bring in the population of the respective province, and then you compute what is called per capita murder. When you do the per capita murder, you will see at the bottom, it's left, I don't know, there are provinces, and then you have your population numbers, and then you also have your ratios. The province with the highest per capita murder is the province of the Eastern Cape, which has 15.4 per 100,000 of the population. The second is the Western Cape with 14.2 per 100,000, and KwaZulu-Natal, it's at 10 per 100,000. And those are the population figures per province. You can see that the province of Limpopo, which is the lightest of the provinces, indicate that it is the province where the chances of a person ending up being a victim of murder is between 0 and 4%, 0 and 4 per 100,000, whereas in the Eastern Cape, it's 15 per 100,000 of the population. If you take the whole Eastern Cape province and divide it into equal portions of 100,000 per population. Then we look at the causative factors, where we try and look at what are the factors that lead people to kill or murder each other. For this, we drew a sample of 5,361 counts, and then we looked at the reasons that were expatiated in terms of why a particular person was killed. We observed that it was indicated in 1,137 counts that the reason why people killed each other was because of arguments, misunderstanding, road rage, or provocation. And the province which has the highest number was indicated to be KwaZulu-Natal, with 343 of the murders attributable to arguments, misunderstanding, road rage, or provocation. Then at number 3, we also had murders that happened because of robberies. From this sample size, it was indicated that 323 of the murders has happened together with a robbery, and the province which indicated the highest number of murders that happened with robbery was the province of Gauteng, which indicated that 103 of the murders also happened together with a robbery. Then at number 5, it was indicated in 240 counts that the causative factor was because of gangsterism, and that is gang-related. And the province which indicated the highest number was the province of Western Cape, which indicated that 208 of the murders were as a result of gangsterism. Further down, we have tax-related. It was indicated in 68 of the murders, and the leading province there was Gauteng, which attributable 45 murders to tax-related incidents, and the Western Cape at number 2 with 16 counts. Having determined the causative factor, now we check at the place of occurrence. Where are these murders happening? Again, from the same sample size, it was indicated that 2,990 of these murders happened at a public place, street, open field, recreation center, park, or beach. 1,589, it was indicated that they have taken place at the residence of the perpetrator or the victim, including residences known by victim perpetrators like family members, friends, neighbors, etc. We also had 190 of the murders that it was indicated to have taken place at outlets where liquor is being sold and consumed, which included your shebeens, tavern, pub, nightclub, bottle stores, etc. Then we also looked at the instances whereby 5 or more people were killed in one incident. If you look at this slide, it's 5 incidents, but the total number of victims is almost 35, meaning that if you were to take the average, it's 7 victims per incident. And the highest number was what we have observed, where we had multiple murders at a tavern which took place in Pinar, where a shootout ensued after 2 vehicles drove into a tavern parking area. 8 victims died at the scene and 3 were taken to hospital, One victim succumbed to the injuries at the hospital. This single incident in Pinar resulted in 9 murder victims and 2 cases or 2 counts of attempted murder. Then, from the summary that I read, one can easily see that when we look at the weapon of choice in the commission of these murders, from the 5,361 counts that we looked at, a firearm was indicated to have been the weapon of choice to commit the murder in 2,559 of the killings. And again, I also caution that this does not necessarily have a one-to-one relation. It does not mean that one firearm was used to kill one person. Like the incident of the Tavern case, 9 people succumbed. We don't know how many shooters or how many guns were there. So there is a many-to-one relationship between the number of bodies and the firearm that is being used. This was the next slide. It was covered by the minister in his opening remarks that there were 22 police officers that were killed. Of these, 16 were killed off duty and 6 were killed on duty. And then in the previous slide where we look at the causative factors, we also saw that there were other 18 personnel that is involved in law enforcement that were also killed. So if you bring the two together, the police and other law enforcement personnel that are involved, it gives you that the total number of people that are involved in law enforcement activities that were killed in the quarter is 40. Then again, the issue of attacks on rural communities. For the current quarter, we had 6 counts of attacks on rural communities. Of these 6, 2 were employees, 1 was a farm dweller, 2 were farmers, 1 was a farm manager, and the table above gives you the breakdown in terms of where did these provinces or where did these murders take place. On the next slide, we then look at the rape. The rape has increased in a number of provinces, with the highest increase recorded in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, 128 counts more compared to the previous period, and the second highest increase was in the province of Mpumalanga with 85 counts, Free State at number 3 with 8 counts more, Northern Cape with 5 counts more. Of the 3 months that make up the quarter, the only reduction that we have observed was in the month of February, where the reduction was 113. Similar to the murder, we also took into consideration what is called per capita, and what we have observed here, we saw that the Eastern Cape is the murder capital per capita. Again, in terms of the rape, the province with the highest per capita rape is again the Eastern Cape. However, for the rape, the second highest province with the per capita is the Free State with 24 per 100,000 people likely ending up as victims of rape. Then when we looked at the places of occurrence of the rapes, this time around we took from a sample of 7,660. From this sample, it was indicated that 4,790 of the rapes have taken place at the residence of the perpetrator or the victim, including residences known by victim perpetrators, family members, and neighbors. 1,533, it was indicated that they took place at the public place. We also have 80 at, I think it's at row number 5, whereby 80 of the rapes have taken place at educational institutions, which include your schools, universities, colleges, daycare center, etc. Then just below the educational institutions, we have 77 rapes that have taken place in abandoned buildings. That is an instance whereby somebody maybe was building and they vacated the building, or somebody was occupying, they vacated the place, and now it becomes an abandoned building, and it now becomes a shelter for people who are interested in committing these heinous crimes. Whereas the ideal way or the ideal situation is that when immediately a building becomes dilapidated or it becomes vacated, it should then be demolished so that it cannot be used as a harbor for criminal activities, especially for heinous crimes like rapes. Then we also looked at what is a proxy for gender-based violence and femicide. We used the domestic relationship between the perpetrator and the victim to try and determine the issue of GBVF. We look at whether the perpetrator and the victim have some kind of a domestic relationship, either as ex-husband, ex-girlfriend, current boyfriend, etc. And what we have determined when we looked at the murders, we found that 236 of the murders, it was indicated that the victim and the perpetrator had some kind of a domestic relationship. And of these 236, 137 victims were female and 99 were male. Then on the third row, no, it's a column. On the third column, we saw that the crime of rape, it was indicated that 1,053 counts of rape happened between people who have some kind of a domestic relationship, like I indicated, ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, ex-husband, brother, uncle, whatever the type of relationship it might be, but as long as it is domestic. 1,053 of these rapes happen between people who have this type of relationship. And of these, 1,015 victims were female and 38 were male. Then we move on to the subcategories of robbery with aggravating circumstances. Moving on to carjacking, the only province that has recorded an increase was the Northwest, 2 counts more. Northern Cape recorded the same number as in the previous comparable period, and across all the 3 months that make up the quarter, we have recorded decreases. Then robbery at residential premises, the provinces that recorded increases was the KwaZulu-Natal with 58 counts more, Eastern Cape at number 2 with 44 counts more, Limpopo with 35 counts more at number 3, and the Northwest with 10 counts more. All the other provinces not mentioned have recorded decreases, and the only month within this quarter whereby the robbery at residential premises has increased was in the month of January, which recorded 73 counts more. Robbery at non-residential premises, the only province that recorded an increase was the Northern Cape with 2 counts more, and all the other provinces recorded decreases. Then cash in transit robberies, we observed increases in the province of Northwest with 3 counts more, Gauteng with 1 count more, and KwaZulu-Natal and the Northern Cape recorded the same number as in the previous comparable period. What is worth noting in the Northern Cape is that in the previous period it was 0, and again in the current period it's 0, and KwaZulu-Natal it's 12 in each reference period. And the provinces not mentioned there have recorded decreases. And this is the layout in terms of how the CITs that we had seen in the previous slide were executed. 22 were executed while the armored vehicle was on the road, and the breakdown of these 22 in terms of province, 11 happened in KwaZulu-Natal, 2 in the Eastern Cape, 6 in Gauteng, 2 in Northwest, and 1 in Mpumalanga. And we also had 11 incidents where the CIT is termed a cross pavement. That will be in an instance whereby the CIT personnel are moving between the armored vehicle to the shop, either going or coming from the shop. And those that were, when the armored vehicle was on the road, to gain access to the cash, bombs were used. Then we also have a summary of the kidnapping From the sample size of 4,254, we determined that ransom was demanded in 214 counts. Extortion was 41 were extortion related, and 13 were human trafficking related kidnappings. Then we also look at what is called the core diversions. Core diversions will be instances which are not necessarily criminal related, but which would require the presence of the police to monitor such incidents. If it was around the exam time, it will include accompanying exam scripts and question papers to and from schools, and also incidents whereby there are protests, etc. Some, of course, are termed peaceful, and some are unrest related. So in total, the police presence were required in 1,228 peaceful incidents, and also for 475 that were termed to be unrest related. And this table basically gives a summary of the national picture in comparison with the provincial picture at a glance. It's the same crime that we have talked to, so I would not necessarily talk to any of this slide, but just to indicate that national, when you compare it to provinces, these are per crime, which province has increased, which province has decreased. And so is the same way as the table that we had seen at the beginning. And as I indicated, the whole presentation will be uploaded on the SAPS website, and this is the link by which you can access the full presentation. Alternatively, you can use the QR code. It will then take you to the SAPS website where the whole presentation will be made available. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Major General. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'll call upon the National Commissioner just to share some success stories of the SAPS.
Thank you very much, Kamu. Let me recognize the Minister of Police, the DG, Dadisbui, the Deputy National Commissioners, the Lieutenant General Msikidi and Sibia, and ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me start once more, just an emphasis on the case that the Minister spoke about of Nomandini. Just to emphasize that we have seen a lot of crosses along the road and protest march. I happen to be one of those that went to that crime scene. It happened on the 30th of August 2020. You remember it was still lockdown time, more or less those times there were a lot of number of lockdowns during COVID. And where the Rafeti family, the couple were murdered. As the minister said, 3 people were arrested. And one of the 3, which is Dr. Fikane Ngwenya, he has worked at that farm from the age of 14 years. Unfortunately, as police, we do crime prevention, but there is no way we can do crime prevention between a farm worker and a farm owner. It's just one of those unfortunate incidents. He was with 2 of his accomplices, and they were arrested. They were all sentenced, various sentences, 21 years plus life sentences. And as a result, those crosses that we have seen, that protest march, it was farmers, yes, supporting that family. But that specific murder the motive was robbery, because this accused, he did indicate that he know and he have seen 2 safes in the house for all the years he have been working there. So always he knew that there is money in those safes, and his motive was with his colleagues to get that money. So just to put it in perspective, that It might be called with another names, genocide, whatever, but that was a matter which is motivated by robbery. Coming back to some of the successes that we have achieved as South African Police Service, ladies and gentlemen, we have seen quite a number of crimes that shows quite number of decreases, which General Skukuni did indicate. But in terms of Operation Chanela 2, which we are currently busy with, we have conducted more than 468,000 stop and searches, more than 274 high visibility patrols, 55,775 premises were searched, 5,007 liquor premises were shut down. You'd recall that most of our crimes, especially our sexual offenses, as well as our assault, common and assault GPH, including attempted murder and some of the murders, are generated by alcohol. So hence, we have shut down 5,700 liquor premises during the period of January to March this current year. We have also arrested 178,757 suspects for various crimes, including 20,595 wanted suspects. Of course, they will not be wanted for crimes for that specific quarter. It might be periods in the past. But those were the number of wanted suspects that were arrested for offenses that will include murder, rape, sexual offenses, business and house robberies, as well as carjacking. The breakdown of these arrests will be as follows. Your murder and attempted murder, 3,589 suspects arrested. Rape and attempt, 3,134. Assault GBH, 21,176 arrested. Illegal immigrants, 15,034 arrested. Driving under the influence of alcohol, 6,855 drivers were arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. Human trafficking, 95 suspects were arrested. During the same period, we confiscated 1,293 explosives that are used mainly for cash in transit, including ATM bombings. And also to indicate that most of these explosives, they come through the country, either through the borderline or through the port of entries. They originally, most of them are manufactured in this country, and they get transported up north to various countries for mining purposes. But unfortunately, they get smuggled back into the Republic. Hence, most of these, we confiscate them at Bait Bridge, port of entry, when they are coming back into the country. A total of 2,900 million cash as proceeds of crime was also confiscated, and 842 vehicles that were reported either stolen or hijacked were recovered in the process. A number of firearms were confiscated. You heard minister saying over 16,049 firearms were destroyed also during the same period, but they are not specifically recovered during the quarter of January to March, but there are various periods, but they were destroyed during this specific period. Operation Valamgodi arrested over 5,000 suspects, and majority of them were foreign nationals, with the highest number being Zimbabweans, followed by 1,242, Mozambicans 1,141, South Africans 1,097, and the Basotho nationals 658. And 90 legal firearms within this Operation Valamgodi were confiscated during the period, and 43 trucks that were used during illegal mining. With regard to drugs, 23 suspects were arrested for being possession of drugs. That will include those that are arrested trafficking drugs from at OR Tambo, mostly coming from South America. So 20 of those drug traffickers were arrested. A total of 3,471 suspects were arrested for dealing in drugs. Quite a number of them, you would recall, also the clandestine lab that we found, one in Western Cape, one in 3 in Standerton. And we also did a drug destruction operation that was worth 340 million rands. And we will be destroying again some drugs in the near future. With regard to cash in transit heist, which is currently a problem and a challenge for us, especially in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, that is where it is still a challenge. We have arrested a number of 39 suspects were arrested, 13 illegal firearms were confiscated, and 15 vehicles that were used in the commission of this crime were also confiscated. With regard to police killings, 6 police killers were arrested during the period of these 3 months. Coming to GBV convictions since January 2025 to March 2025. These convictions happened during this period, but they are not referring necessarily to crimes that happened during that period. As you know, cases take quite a while to finalize. The FCS unit arrested 5,871 suspects who were perpetrators of GBV, and a total of 703 of these accused persons were convicted and sentenced to time in prison. 93 were handed down a combined 133 life sentences by various courts in the country. 95 were convicted or sentenced to 20 years and more. 174 convicted between 10 and 19 years. And lastly, 341 were convicted to a period of 1 to 9 years. That is for the GBV. The rest of in overall, people that were sentenced during that period, 182 were handed down life sentences. That is for all other various crimes. 21 were handed 40 years and more imprisonment. 22 were handed between 30 and 39 years imprisonment. 229 were handed between 20 and 29 years imprisonment. 963 were sentenced to between 10 and 19 years imprisonment. 1,426 were sentenced to between 5 and 9 years imprisonment. I think basically that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move to the questions and answer segment of our media briefing. I do have a colleague from GCIS Lebogang who is going to assist with the roving mics. I will ask you, colleagues, just to audibly state your name and the media house that you represent, and as far as possible, just state as to which member of our panel your question is posed. By a show of hands, may I just see if we do have any questions from colleagues? I see 2 hands. Okay, Lebogang, can we just have the mics here in the front, please?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Junior Kumar from Newsroom Africa. Minister, you spoke about, basically you debunked a lot of things that were said by the President of the US when it comes to the genocide, when it comes to the action being taken against those that commit some of these atrocities. I just wanted to find out, and also you laid out how in this past quarter, how many farm murders happened, whether they were black individuals or white. I just wanted to find out from yourself, before the president left for the US, was there an opportunity for him to engage you in some of the statistics, just to prepare himself for that meeting? Secondly, the president also indicated to the US president that he wanted assistance when it comes to crime fighting, in particular when it comes to technologies, improved technologies. As the minister in charge of this department, what sort of assistance would you want from the US? And lastly, Minister, you had indicated that there were certain high-profile positions that had been frozen in KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, I think also the Eastern Cape. And you had, in a written response, admitted to Rise Zanzi that the freezing of some of these high-profile positions had basically impacted crime fighting. Have these vacancies now been filled? Thank you.
Thank you. We can take the next hand.
I'm going to say it's one for Mr. Paul. Can you ask
May I ask you just to pause for 2 seconds? Apologies. Apologies. You may proceed.
Yeah, it's one for Mr. Paul. You mentioned about the technologies that was mentioned in the White House meeting. It was one of my questions. But the other question is, what do you think, what budget changes would be required to implement better policing in the country? And then, according to this study, SEPS is dealing with the aging senior management crisis. And how are you filling the gaps with
that? Do we have another hand before we get the minister to respond to the questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. First question is, yes, there was a meeting. You would recall that when we released that quarter statistics, AfriForum made a statement, a public statement. I can't remember whether they were together with Solidarity, but I do remember that they made a statement to the effect that we had underplayed, the Minister of Police has underplayed crime stats on farms in South Africa. We denied it, that we had underplayed. But because they were in the US or en route to US, we said when they come back, we'll engage them. When they came back, we engaged them. The team was led by General Mchunu. I wasn't part of it because we didn't want that to be seen as political in any way. It had to do with stats only. And in their engagement, the report that we got, the report back that we got was that in the first place, we were saying there were 12 murders on the farm. AfriForum said there were 8 murders on their record. Now, just there, 12 is bigger than 8, so you can't underplay upwards. It's impossible. So they acknowledged that. 2, when they engaged one another, it was clear that our stats were much more comprehensive and quite categorized. For instance, where we talk about a dweller, we separate a dweller from an owner. If you are a son of a farmer, you are not a farmer yourself, you are the son, you are a dweller. That's how SAPS categorize you. And those were corrected and aligned. And it was agreed that there are no further queries. SAPS statistics stood. And we agreed that we would work together in future. And there's no problem. So there was a meeting, there was an engagement, and there were results. The second issue, and in any case, we did emphasize in our statements that we should try by all means to depoliticize. But when in Parliament, subsequent to that, I was asked a question about the one farmer that had been murdered in the last quarter, that is October to December. And I did say that that farmer was a white farmer, for purposes of clarity. And as I said earlier, we don't want, as a principle, to do this to color matters, and because all of these people are South Africans, and that is what matters. There are matters, we are concerned about matters, and we should stop all of them. But historical color has been played in this. And it has led to confusion and assumption that the people who are dying on farms are only white people, which is false. Actually, greater numbers of people who have been dying on farms in South Africa are black people, as dwellers, as workers, and all of that. In the October-December stats, we spoke about 12 people who had been murdered on farms. And out of that, there was one farmer. It was a white farmer. But the majority in that 12 were black people. And I've said in the stats, as Mchunu said, that number of 12 has been reduced this time around, January to March. The number of people who died on farms is 6, not 12, 6. And when I spoke about the 12 in the statement, I was now talking about what then happened, the arrests and all of that. But the number from January to 12 is 6 of people who were murdered on farms. Out of that, we've said there's only one white person who is a dweller. The 2 farmers who were murdered in this period are black farmers. That is what we've said. The next question is on technology. During the orientation last year, one of the areas we focused on was how much technology is there in SAPS that we're using. And we discovered that there is technology that's being used by SAPS and in the policing work. There is, in more than one unit, in other words, by detectives, by intelligence and all that. But we agreed that there is a need to increase the use of technology. And in the summit, we emphasized the same. And even to modernize that, not to hold on one model for too long and then get overtaken by other models. And therefore, it overtakes your ability and your capacity to do necessary work. And that overtaking includes criminals themselves. They use certain technologies, even to deceive or to mislead police and all of that, knowing that some of our equipment are older than whatever that they may be using. That we don't want. We want to be ahead of them all the time, and the resolution was taken at the summit that we need to renew, we need to increase. And that's exactly what we are doing. You would recall we made an announcement that we engaged Business Against Crime, and they committed that they would avail some resources. Currently, engagements are underway, and we're expecting a finality on that. We have identified some of the priorities on technology ourselves that we regard as very, very key and very important. That includes dockets, that we can't afford to have paper dockets all the time. We now need electronic dockets to avoid, among other things, loss of dockets as it happens, either through corruption or otherwise. So technology is regarded by us as very key. Where technology comes from, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we do need technology, and we're working very hard to get to that level. And then vacancies. I'm due to sign for some vacancies today from National Commissioner to close some of the vacancies that have opened up on, in various positions in subs. What we spoke about some time earlier was vacancies in intelligence. Those ones are still are not yet freed. We're doing some work, and in due course, those vacancies will be filled. I didn't get the other question, the last one. It's senior managers. How are we filling the gaps? I would have preferred that question be answered by National Commissioner, because we are mkhuzi wamaphoyisa. We know of life. We ask for good. How does he close gaps in detail? And therefore, I will ask National Commissioner. I would request National Commissioner to come to answer that one. And then there's another one: budget changes required for better policing. Well, on the budget, if you wake me up at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, what do you need? I would say money. I would say increase the budget. But it doesn't happen that way. That's why we've had to think very carefully. And even now, we have discussed with the National Commissioner and agreed that we're going to have a session to analyze our budget now that things seem to be flowing on the budget. We know the allocation. We now need to analyze it in line with the outcomes of the 7th administration priorities, in line with our strategic goals in policing, in line with our annual performance plan, that is the strategic plan and the annual performance plan, but also in line with the outcomes of the summit, just to see how we can optimize. The name of the game, therefore, is optimize your budget. And President has announced that they, in the presidency, together with the Treasury, they are going to form a task team to look at wasteful expenditures in all departments. And we want to start looking at our own with a view to optimizing, because we need money, we need to train more police, we need technology, we need all kinds of support mechanisms for police which require finances. And therefore, on budget, it's about optimizing, cutting here and there and avoiding wasteful expenditure, rather as opposed to waiting for new money, which is not coming. Thank you. But National Commissioner will answer on gaps on senior managers.
With regard to vacant positions within the senior management, yes, we do have. As Minister said, he will be signing off some today that we will advertise, yes. And he did indicate that the intelligence ones will still work on them, and they will be also be filled very, very soon. But we'll be advertising, I think it's over 40 vacant positions from station commanders, including provinces and so on. So that we'll be able to do in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, National Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close, I do know we have one question from the online platforms. I am going to ask Lebogang to read it out, but also just to check from the floor, we do not have any further hands. Am I correct? Okay, so we have one follow-up. So we'll take those two, and thereafter we will then close our media briefing.
I might have missed this, but just clarity of the 6 murders that happened this quarter. I know that you mentioned that the 2 farm owners were black. What were the reasons of the other 4?
I can answer that. 5 of the victims in the farm attacks were all of African descent, and then there was only one white individual who was the farm dweller. Lebo, can we have the question from social media?
We have a question from Shannon Merrick's from ICBC Africa. He's asking, there is a genocide against colored people in the Western Cape. What's SAP's plan to bring law and order against gangsters in the community? The second question, how many black people died due to gun violence in townships?
Thank you, Lebo. So a genocide of colored people in the Western Cape due to gangs. And then this one, how many black people died in townships due to gun violence? Again, we don't classify.
Thank you very much. I do want to say that there are places now in South Africa that are known for murders more than any other thing. And we regard them as high murder zones or hotspots. One such hotspot or murder zone is in the Western Cape in the form of Cape Flats. Now, you have made reference to the word genocide. We are talking about high murder zones, meaning where people almost on a daily basis get murdered in various areas there. Now, it's something that concerns us. It's something that we are discussing in terms of new approaches to dealing with that particular question. Sometime this year, I think it was much before the summit, we had a meeting which was involving both ministry and top management led by a national commissioner and the provincial commissioner, where we met about 30 people in the Western Cape just to get insight, not only on figures and so on, but what exactly is the root cause of murders there? And who could be behind these murders and so on? Not because we didn't know on the side of police, but we wanted to intensify our understanding, including their own analysis as people who are in the Western Cape, in their own words, in their own thinking, which is something that we needed. We got what we want. We are due to go back to them to report back to say, this is our response to your memorandum. They actually made a good presentation. And there were various people, some from academia, others from the religious community, business, and a few other categories. And they expressed their concern, and they were quite happy that we had that kind of engagement. No shouting, no noise, but just an engagement. So we are due to go back there. We will be reporting on progress that we're making on the agreements that we made with the Western Cape government, provincially and locally, the metro, and where there are hitches and so on one hand, but in the main, respond to what they were saying. And in the main, our response will be constituted about by what we are planning to do in the Western Cape to get rid of that problem. It needs to be, it's a problem that needs to be confronted. While we acknowledge things like poverty, drugs and all of that, it doesn't justify in any way that there must be people who must go around carrying firearms and killing and engage in a killing spree against innocent and unarmed people in the Western Cape. This is done by human beings, and their names and surnames are known. Even those who are in drugs, they are well known that so and so is in drugs and all of that. So we're working on those bases, and we'll deal with that question. So Gauteng has its own high matter zones in the south of Johannesburg. We get reports on a daily basis. Your Rivali, El Dorado Park, and other areas in that, and Soshanguve in the north, all those places. They require a different approach, which aims, among other things, to remove that narrative, permanent narrative about those areas. That is what we are preparing to do. Now, black people dying in the townships through gun violence, it's there. You heard me saying, in the next crime stats release, that will be the first quarter of this year, we will include township killings, communal land killings. In other words, communities in communal land, because when you talk about rural areas, you need to include communal land areas, that is land under Amakosi and all of that, and commercial farms as well. Whether they're small holdings and all of that, we'll categorize accordingly so that we're comprehensive and show the whole picture. And we will include the townships as well, just to be comprehensive and show where matters are. Among other things, to fight against assumptions that are being made by some people out there, creating wrong impressions about. But this doesn't mean to say that we're going to be focusing on those. Our focus is reducing matters, which is our main concern wherever it happens, and whoever gets affected, it must be stopped. And police have a mandate to do that, and do whatever it takes to do just that, and we'll do and go for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our media briefing. Once again, apologies for the delayed start, but thank you very much for your attendance and participation. Our media briefing is now closed. Thank you.